Patience, I'm told, is a virtue. A virtue is a rare and precious thing because mostly, they tell me, it's earned, not so much granted. Now, over the past few weeks, we've explored patiently the primary aspects of making a covenant and living into the promises of that covenant. We've learned together how actions, patiently taken over time, earn the closeness that comes in a covenantal community. We talked first about how a covenant can be signed, how the making of a covenant is heralded at times by the very sky above, or perhaps a piece of paper, or maybe even a book that we sign, becoming part of belonging in a community that we share. And then we looked at the ways that a covenant can be sealed. We considered the gift of a life made fulfilling promises. And we also considered the futility of a life made of breaking promises or refusing to see those promises through. We considered how we stay and how we grow in relationships with one another. And so after all your patience, we arrive at what might be the most important part of any covenant. The part that can be summed up in those two important words, so what? There is no shame in wondering. So I do all this stuff, I see a sign in the sky, or I make one, I follow all these rules, these bylaws maybe. I work on ways of staying in relationship with folks in this place. I show up for committee meetings. I park all the cars on any given Sunday. All for what? And that is the question for every person in every faith community. Why are we really doing all of this? What's in it for me? How will this place deliver on its promise? Now, for a lot of our religious siblings around the world, gatherings like this hold something else. There's a purpose to them, perhaps receiving a sacrament or a blessing that will help to save them from the time of trial. Now, as a part of community formed in the Universalist tradition by our Universalist ancestors, our ancestors studied the actions they saw in those same sacred texts, and they studied the world they saw with their own eyes. They came to believe that all of humanity was saved from eternal damnation. So one big part of that question, why are we doing all of this, kind of goes away. And what are we left with? Because most of us do not come here, do not take part here because we believe this will save us from, eternal fire. Some of us do, and that is fine, of course. A lot of us, though, seek to affirm the ways that those people want to be in this world and to save them from the next. But as a faith community, we require no affirmation, no article of faith. And so setting aside the investment theory of faith, storing up goodness in this life to pay off in the next, why else are we doing this? And it's a great question. It's one that I was actually asking myself on the morning of a day that I will never forget. It was Saturday, November 17th, 2007, to be exact. And I was looking at my work that I was doing on an assignment from a close spiritual advisor that I needed to complete. Part of my own faith journey that brought me right here at that time led me to an advisor who wanted me to write out every single time I'd been mad at someone, or every time I'd been angry in my life. And it was part of a powerful process of letting go. It wasn't a particularly joyous experience, trust me. And I didn't have a set deadline to complete it. But it was that night, that very night, when I would go with one of my best childhood friends to see Stevie Wonder at Madison Square Garden. And I don't know about you, but I'm not walking into a concert with Stevie Wonder with a bunch of baggage in my brain. I wanted to enjoy the concert as fully as possible, so I worked hard to complete this task. And I was almost done. I was almost finished. There in my apartment, I still remember it. I was about to close the book I'd been writing in, ready to be done that Saturday afternoon when I remembered it. I remembered this time in law school where a classmate of mine passed me as I was coming into a classroom and he was leaving. And he leaned a little closer to me than I was accustomed with this guy, brushing my shoulder a little with his. And he spat out a hateful slur I won't repeat here except to call it the other F word that gets you kicked out of a baseball game. And it stung. It made me mad, made me angry, made me scared. And even those many years after it happened, I remember it exactly perfectly. I remember it well. So I wrote it down on the list, my last name on the list, and I was done, and I went to collect my friend to take our seats for the Stevie Wonder show that changed my life forever. Now, we've all experienced awful, unexpected, unasked for, undeserved things in our lives. Some of them do stay with us for a lifetime. In truth, that was not the first utterance of that slur in my direction. I remember once when I ran across the street to embrace a good friend I hadn't seen in a while, and from behind me I heard a cranky voice cackle at me, "God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve." It wasn't one of my prouder moments when I spun around on my heel to the person who uttered it, looked them up and down, and said coolly, "You're going to have to wear better shoes than those tired loafers if you want me to care what you say." Now, I was a younger man in those days. I didn't have a job as a minister. And I've been doing a little bit of, shall we say, brunching that afternoon. So, yeah. I'm sure I would respond with vastly more dignity and compassion today. But responding to a tired and hackneyed, hateful expression with an especially gay comeback was really satisfying. But part of why I could respond the way then had everything to do with where it happened. See, I was on Greenwich Avenue in Greenwich Village, across from an Equinox gym. For those of you who don't know that area, let's just call it gay church. The transgressor was on my turf. So I felt I could respond safely, and I did. But something about that experience in law school, being in a school classroom or a hallway, a place unsafe, still, for many who walk them, especially those outside the mainstream or the norm, did not have the same safe feeling as the hallowed ground of Greenwich Village. Where I was did not let me be fully who I was. It was a particular kind of wounding, I remembered, like something just a little evil had happened to me that day. But we all know, like I said, too well, that greater evils happen all too often. And at least one of them has stayed with me this entire week. The news we heard last week that a child so close in relationship with our own Leslie Horn, that she was sitting in one of the classrooms terrorized by only the latest classroom shooting attack, and that the totality of the terror and trauma of that instant when someone else chose to make life worse, to rob the safety of a place she'd come to know and rely upon, to take that forever, that feeling has only begun to take root in that young life. Just this week, a survivor of Columbine died after a life struggling with opioid addiction, 20 years of struggle. This news holds the reek of evil too many of us are coming to know too well. The branches of shock and trauma stretching out from that one event, indeed from the hundreds of such events over the past few decades, are finding their way into more and more of our lives, increasing bit by bit, bullet by bullet, the intimacy of these experiences for more and more and more people as they follow one after the other. I heard a sermon a few years ago from a minister who was in the same shopping mall in Colorado where there was a mass shooting just hours after a loved one had finished their shopping in that place. And the proximity of that experience of a shooting taking place where her loved one just had been changed the way she saw evils in the world. And in her tradition, she remembered the part of the central prayer of her faith, and deliver us from evil. In the faith of my own upbringing, the portion of that prayer, for those of you who might have heard it before, is followed by a priest saying, "Deliver us, Lord, from every evil and grant us peace in our day." But it seems at times like peace is farther and farther away in our days. This week, a 2-year-old from Guatemala, detained at the border while seeking refuge and asylum, died of illness under the care of Customs and Border Protection, the 4th such death of its kind over the past few months. This week saw the signing of legislation seeking effectively to ban a woman's right to make choices about her own health and safety in some of the most draconian legislation of its kind that we have seen in this nation for 4 decades. And the impunity with which purported leaders of a nation seem to trumpet their own duplicity and hypocrisy when it serves their own self-interest is beyond galling, as plans are underway now to ship those in the migration process from captivity at the border in Mexico into cities that hold themselves out publicly as sanctuaries from criminalizing those yearning to be free. In this time, in these seasons, in so many seasons, our hopes, our prayers for peace among people, peace among nations, of peace even in our daily lives, clash with what the world seems destined to deliver to us itself. What people's actions tell us about their motivations. And it is no wonder that many cry out, "Deliver us from evil." Now, when I tell you I was feeling ecstatic after seeing my Stevie Wonder concert, where I got to see Prince play lead on guitar with Stevie on keys, where I got to see Stevie sing a duet with Tony Bennett, and that I got to sit next to my best friend in the world the whole time, please believe me that ecstatic was an understatement. Even trying to explain the experience to my friend's boyfriend afterward, who'd been studying in a Starbucks for medical school, as I left the two of them to go about their evening together, as I walked across a few blocks and descended the stairs to the subway home, as I waited there on the platform for the train, as I felt the relief of a day spent starting to free myself from those feelings of anger at others, as I felt that freedom coming to fruition in ways I could never have foreseen, as I did all these things, as I felt all these things, I turned to my right, and standing there on the platform, hundreds of miles and piles of years from where I'd last seen him in that law school classroom, was the classmate who spat hate at me in the hallways of my school. Truth is stranger than fiction, my friends. And the moment of the morning I'd spent wondering about this guy, the beginning of the process of letting anger yield just a bit to forgiveness, even if understanding him and his motivations were far, far away. The work I'd done, the actions I'd taken, put my feet in motion. I walked over to him, and his eyes, up from under the mop of hair he'd acquired since school, flashed recognition right away. And he smiled. He looked positively delighted to see me. So I asked, "How are you?" And he started into it. He failed the bar exam the first time. He couldn't get a job. He's doing all this other stuff. I was a little happy to hear that stuff. That's not in the script. I just needed to confess. But now he was working in a public defender's office, advocating on behalf of those who the system is seeking to hurt. And in spite of myself, pushing against a society that today seeks so desperately to be right and prove others wrong, to hold to the ways we've been wronged as ways to prove the evil of the other who wronged us, hearing his story from my one-time tormentor, having heard from Stevie that loving is all that matters, we started making out right there. I'm just kidding. No, we didn't. But we did spend a subway ride together, which was very nice. I wished him well, and I might have even done like a bro shoulder pat handshake hug as I departed the train, went up the steps from the underground tunnels beneath the city that we shared, and started my few blocks journey home. And it might have been his forthcomingness, his nature in explaining his own failings. And it might have been what I detected as an earnest desire to connect and relive some of our shared history. Whatever it was, I started to wonder a little bit. Was there a chance I might have actually misheard him all those years ago? Part of me knows I didn't. I know what that word sounds like. But another part of me wondered, was I holding on to this for nothing? Here on this platform, delivered up to me, standing by me, in a way only a universe that likes to laugh at us would do. Here was an answer. And the question is the one we started with. What are we really doing in this place? We signed up. We sealed our promise with a few actions and by building our relationships. But what do we get? What is delivered to us? Children are crying out for safety in their own schools, in places that for many educators are no longer safe places for them either, for the lives of their children to boot. And already here, members in this community, in this church, have been in touch with one another and then with me about how to help one another through the trauma of these experiences. The beginning of this is starting even here, how to deliver one another from every evil and grant us peace in this day. And our close allies in the free and open access to affordable and understanding care for all mothers. Without judgment of those mothers, Planned Parenthood has already thanked this congregation for being one of its only faith-based organization supporters on this island. And they have asked to meet with me at General Assembly to talk more about what we can do as one, again, of their only faith partners that they have here. And I don't think this is one of the cities where those in the migration process will be shipped from the Mexican border. But in some ways, I wish it were. So that we could together welcome the stranger in ways that we do so well on this island, that we try to do so well in our lives. And on Friday, right here, we will gather to talk openly and frankly about the kind of justice-seeking work we want to do together in this community on our Faith Action Friday. How we are going to do it is important. How we will deliver on our promises here in this community. For here on this island, a place where so many of us, or so many of our ancestors, experienced what it means to be delivered here, safe in a place of understanding and transcending beauty. I believe more than ever the history and traditions rooted here in a kind of deep acknowledgement of systematic suffering that occurred, in the kind of searching analysis of the causes of systematic racism faced so bravely by so many in this very place, this very room, and these actions may lay answers to what we are really doing here. The sign we see, the sign we make to begin our own journey, the sign that brought us here could well be that what we see in the world might, just might, be healed with compassion. The seal we make might, just might, be in the work we do for others, in the work we do for ourselves, could well be for peace, for understanding, for harmonious coexistence in a world, in a word, for justice. And we, in a community enlivened by covenants, by walking the walk and not by creeds and talking just the talk, might, just might, lift our voices to a hurting world and say, this is a place where you too may enter safely and be home. This is a place where you too may be delivered from evil and know peace in your day. This is a place where you too might know an end to grief and longing and be delivered from evil, where we are signed by compassion, sealed by justice, and delivered by joy. And may it ever be so. Blessed be, and amen.